Good morning. Well, good morning. If it is morning with you, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. Good to have you with us. I'm Donald Taylor here in London, and we've got a packed schedule for you over the next 2 weeks of 16 sessions. Lots of stuff. I'm actually going to be beginning the first session with Eglė but let me just quickly tell you about the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. It's a follow-up to the Learning Technologies Conference, takes place in April or May each year. We bring together speakers, thinkers from that session to share follow-ups from what they've been doing. And we've got a great lineup for you over the next 2 weeks. We have, yes, of course, AI. We also have people looking at skills, looking at how to show the value of what you've done, and also, of course, questioning a whole bunch of things. How, for example, can we ensure that we have our critical thinking skills in place in a world of AI and challenge? So lots taking place over the next 2 weeks in our 16 sessions. Firstly, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's using the chat. Lots of chat going on, people joining us from Florida, from Paris, from Spain, and of course, lots of people from Greece and people coming in from all over the world, and particularly from UK, where the weather seems to be uniformly grey and miserable. Well, we hope to brighten your day here in the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. The first session begins with me and Eglė, my co-author, co-researcher. She's going to join us now. And we're going to be looking at the world of AI and doing the first webinar to follow up on the research we published on the last day of September, looking at how AI is being used by L&D today. So, Eglė, great to have you with us. I'm going to bring up the slides and then we're going to kick off. Eglė, I'm Don Taylor. I chair the Learning Technologies Conference. With you, I do research, I invest, and I support learning technology startups. That's me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm still trying to recover from the fact that we have someone from Florida joining at this time.
I'm amazed. It must be 4 o'clock in the morning in Florida. Thank you for joining us, and have a cup of coffee. Eglė, who are you? Who are you? For
yes.
people who might be
who am I? That's a good question. Hi, everyone. I'm Eglė, Director of Nodes. I am a learning and AI strategist. I work with organizations on integrating AI into L&D on this whole people side of AI transformation. And I've run the AI and L&D research series with Don for the past 3 years.
Fabulous. Laura says it is early in Florida and she's a little bit sleepy. Stefan's coming to us from Vienna. Stefan, I'm going to be with you this afternoon. I go from here onto a taxi straight to Heathrow to do an event in Bratislava tomorrow. The world is a small place. Great to have everybody with us. We're talking about, Eglė and I, about AI in L&D and our focus, because there's so much we could say. Our focus today is about our research and looking particularly at how people are actually using it. It's our third annual report. I'm going to press through the slides and Eglė and I will share the presentation. I'm going to ask you a question right at the beginning. And the question at the beginning, firstly, a thank you to our sponsors. It's really important. These are the people who make it possible for us to sustain this research over the years. So thank you very much to Regis Company, Open Sesame and Speaks. A question for you. And we won't have time to dwell into this as much as I'd like to, but how does your use of AI in L&D differ today from what you were doing 1 year ago? And I ask this because, as you'll see in a second, things have changed, we believe, quite a lot in the past 12 months. But Eglė, we've been doing this research for 3 years. We launched our first report on the anniversary of the launch of ChatGPT. And that was a period when things were just chaotic and we were trying to figure out what was going on. What have you seen change in that period of, let's say, 3 years rather than just 1 year here?
Yeah, I would say that there are still a lot of use cases of AI that are very similar across the years. However, if in 2023, there was a lot of talk, but only the first movers were doing anything with AI. And I think this year, this is something that we're going to talk about, is that we had a critical number of people actually using AI, not experimenting with it. And what that means is that there's a lot more grassroots innovation coming out of it. People are a lot more comfortable with AI, which means that they are more comfortable pushing it a little bit and inventing new uses. So that's good to see.
And look, we've got answers coming into the question. Look, I would invite you to read these answers in the chat and to share your thoughts, because the chat, I'm a firm believer that the answer to your questions is in the room. You'll meet great people in that chat, share your ideas, get ideas from them. Eglė, I just want to share some of those thoughts with you very quickly before we crack on. We've got a lot to cover. Helen says, we've only just started using it with the launch of Copilot in our organization. That's actually something that's pretty common. Copilot and the integration of AI into existing platforms really leading in a lot of organizations. Colin says it's limited to people who see the value and the possibilities. I find Irina's really interesting. We're using more speech simulators for practice. Eglė, that's something we've seen, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. So this is one of these big, both the Copilot and the fact that what Copilot has done to the proliferation of AI in the workplace and L&D as well as yes, the use of conversational AI for practice.
Anna's saying that she's accelerating content creation ideas for workshop design, mostly generative AI and day-to-day use, and quite a few people talking about using it as an administrative help to just help getting through the day with everything. But Rachel says, I love using AI to chuck puns and jokes into content. Believe me, I have all the dad jokes you need. If you need a bad joke, I'm your man. Let's press on with the content we have to get through, but please do keep that chat rolling, because I think it's invaluable, as I say, to share ideas and get a feeling for what everybody else is doing in our field. Want to look at 5 things today. That last one, conclusions, that's one slide. Slide 3, the case studies. I'm just going to give you a quick look at that. Our chunky bits are 2 and 4, when we're looking at investigating in detail what happened in number 2. And in 4, we're going to present you with an idea of what does it all mean, the so what. We're going to talk about how people are using it, very much like you are at the moment. Then we're going to say, in number 4, what does that mean for us in L&D? Let's push on. This is the report, and there will be the chance to, I'll drop that QR code, not a QR code, I'll drop that URL into the chat later on. But this is the report, and it's the 3rd year that we've done our annual report. We actually did an interim report as well last year. More than 600 people, more than 50 countries. We've got 20 pages of solid case studies, so you can really see what people are doing in our field. We've used this 50s vibe for the artwork in this, just to get away from the really tedious robot android artwork that you tend to see on the anything involving AI. I've taken us back to the 1950s to have a sense of what the future might have looked like. We're going to look very quickly at the report and how it's put together before we drill down into investigating uses. The key thing for me in the last 18, 12 months has been what we call the inflection point. We ask people in our surveys, how are you using AI? How far advanced are you in using AI in L&D? And in 2023, you could see that the majority of people, not majority, but the biggest chunk of people were experimenting. The pre-use bit includes people who are thinking about it, or people who say, well, we'll never use it. Experimenting includes people who are actually piloting it. The blue bit at the bottom, using, includes only 2 categories: people who are using it or people who are using it intensively. So piloting is an experimenting bit. So on the anniversary of the launch of ChatGPT, a lot of people were experimenting with it. The next year, fewer people were experimenting and more people were in that pre-use phase, in that phase of just thinking about it. It's almost like the word had got out and people were interested in doing more. But this year, look what happens. This year, the word has got out. And the people who were experimenting in the green box in 24 and now in the blue box in 25, they're using it. And the people who are pre-use have shrunk. And I think what's happened is we've moved from being interested in AI as an idea to having it in the toolkit. And again, we're seeing in the chat, people saying, yeah, I'm using it in Copilot, I'm using it whatever. People are using it as part of the daily routine. So I think, and a lot of people talking about video creation here. That's HeyGen, Synthesia, Colossian, a lot of tools available there. All right, so they're using it, and we're using it now as part of our toolkit. What are the barriers to use? The fascinating thing is that the barriers don't seem to have changed much. Whereas we've had that inflection point for use, the barriers haven't really changed much. Look at that, 24, 25. There is very little difference between those bars, and they are even in the same order. We give people this list to choose from, and they've chosen things in the same order each year. Three things about this. Firstly, very little change. Secondly, look at the top two. The key barriers are not technological. The key barriers are about people. It's about data, security, lack of trust in what's going on. I think that's a key thing here. But then also, one thing that has changed, not dramatically, but one thing that has changed is, thank you, Andrew, for sharing the link to the report. That's great. Really appreciate that. One thing that has changed this year is that business of the integration issues and regulatory and compliance barriers. Eglė, we talked about this, and we noticed that those are more of a barrier this year than they were last year. But Eglė, we thought that was a good thing, didn't we? Because we said, hey, if people are experiencing integration issues, that's got to mean they're pushing what you can do with AI a bit further. Do you still hold on to that idea?
Yeah, I think that's right, because you reach integration issues and compliance issues once you go beyond your free ChatGPT account, and once you're actually thinking about, okay, how do we customize these tools? How do we integrate new tools in our tech stack? And yeah, this is actually a good thing. It's I'm glad to see that.
And strange enough, at the bottom you can see it's difficult to make a business case. That's also higher this year than last year, but really small. We kind of hope that becomes more of a barrier in the future, because if you're finding it difficult to make the business case, it may be that you're, again, pushing the boundaries. All right, so that's the barriers to the use. It's part of the toolkit. We've seen the barriers indicate there's probably a bit more sophistication going on in use. What are we using it for? Loving the chat, by the way, and I'm sorry that I can't answer the questions in the chat. Over 500 people registered for this session. We're going to find it difficult to deal with everything, but please, we'll have LinkedIn codes at the end to contact me and Eglė. So let's keep in touch after this. We looked at it, we found that really we could probably we could probably create 4 categories for things that people are using AI for in L&D. These are the things: content and design, a lot of that's come up, but also operations and other things, strategy and insight, and workforce enablement, helping people do their jobs day to day. And if we look at that on a graph, we give people a list of things. They can choose as many things as they want from the list. And if we ask people what they're using AI for, in the top half of the table, or the top of the table, you can see that it's dominated by the blue color, content and design. Not surprising, and that's what the chat's talking about. But in the next section, we'll see, as Eglė drills down into it, that there's a lot of detail behind that content, and it's done in a more sophisticated way than it was even 12 months ago. In the bottom half, you can see workforce enablement. The sort of light lilac color is there, as is strategy and insight. So the more, if you like, complex ways of using AI in L&D to help us understand data in the green, and workforce enablement, help people practice and support them in their daily tasks, they're at the bottom. But there is one, and this is very similar to how it was last year in 24, but there's one significant change to last year, which is qualitative data analysis, which is really, Eglė, correct me if I'm wrong, when we talk about this, we largely mean looking at the words people might have put through in a survey and assessing that, we get people's responses. That was ranked 8th last year, but it's up to 5th last year. It's by far and away the most significant mover on this table. Eglė, do you think this means that people are using AI now in a more sophisticated way?
I think, especially with data, actually it's really interesting to compare that to our first survey in 2023, where, if I remember correctly, there were only 4 mentions of using AI for any kind of data analysis across hundreds of responses. And now we are seeing it as number 5. So I think it's definitely on one hand, you might say that, oh, but it's not qualitative analysis. It's not quantitative analysis. This is, survey data.
This is words, not numbers.
Before. Yeah, but actually, when we look into what this means in practice, it means that we're going not through tens or hundreds, we're going through thousands of survey responses over years, looking at these kinds of trends, looking at sentiments, which really gives L&D leaders and L&D teams direction and some sort of feedback and the ability for them to iterate on what they are offering the business. So I think this actually is a huge unlock for L&D teams.
Thank you for that insight. And you've spent, well, I was going to say hours, actually days, poring over the words. We ask people, what are you using AI for? We give them this table. Okay, they can choose things on this multiple choice, but we also give them a free text field to fill in. You can put in 2 letters if you want to. You can put in as much as you want. People do. We had 20,000 words in responses to that free text question. How are you using AI in L&D? We've gone through them all. Eglė has gone through it all in absolute fine detail to come up with these categories, to look at it. And when she says that's how people are using it, that's how they're using it. Now, Suzanne just asked about how people are using AI for quantitative analysis and data analysis generally. I'd love it if you could just think about that in the next section, because Eglė's going to take up the baton now, and it's going to look at how do we investigate in more detail what's going on in these 4 use cases. And here are the 4 cases, just to remind you. Well, not 4 use cases, 4 types of use: content, operations, strategy, and workforce enablement. Eglė, over to you to drive this.
Yeah, so at a high level, compared with this time last year, AI use in 2025 can be summed up as similar but more. Over the past 2 years, responses tended to fall into 2 broad camps. So using AI for learning, design, and content, and then using AI for everything else. Largely because the use of AI for content development was so overwhelming, and actually it still is in a way. However, this year, as I said before, we saw more varied and creative AI uses. So we have organized them into these 4 domains of value. And let's go through them one by one, because I think that's going to answer a lot of your questions. Starting with content and design, and because this is such a big category, I've organized them under 3 subcategories, which is research, learning design, and content development. So we're going to go through them one by one. And if we can start with this, with research, AI at a high level, AI use in research enables learning designers to be much more particular about what they're creating and for whom. So especially with the changes that we are seeing with user research, which was a relatively rare AI use case last year, and we're seeing a lot more of it this year. So if we think about the sort of the 4 stages of learning design: discovery, design, delivery, evaluation, there's a lot more happening in the discovery phase, and that means that obviously there are downstream effects to the other phases of the process. So starting with content research, a very popular AI use case is information gathering, of course, which includes deep research on a topic. And what AI enables to do is to look into market research, to look into academic sources, which would take just too much time before, and to map the required content, identify concepts, theories, skills involved. So pretty much get a really good sense of what needs to be included in a program or course. And note how that means that the SME comes into this process much later. As the quote indicates, there's this slight change in the role and relationship between the instructional designer and the subject matter expert. So with content synthesis and analysis, we are taking these large amounts of information from different sources, and we are organizing and sort of making sure that we are integrating all that we have. We have obviously all of that research, like external research, but we also have existing content. We have internal documents. We have articles from the web. So you just pretty much chuck everything into AI, and it helps you make sense of what you have and what people need to know. Content gap analysis, another very popular use case where you identify the areas where existing materials do not fully cover the requirements that you have, and you highlight where new material needs to be developed. SME session preparation. This is quite interesting because you're using AI to prepare for your conversations with SME. Again, SME is not the starting point. You're using all of this to prepare for your conversations. You prepare draft materials for them to review. You come up with sharper questions to ask them. So perhaps fill in the gaps rather than get everything, get all of the information from them. So again, a different way of doing this discovery. And one interesting way that people were using AI was for team session follow-up. So if you can imagine, if you're doing all of these design workshops and content discussions, then you use AI to record these sessions so that AI can synthesize them and give you some sort of reference for future work that you as a team can all build on. And for user research, of course, there's research prep, which is, okay, so how do we do this? Here are our constraints. Here's how we can run this research. Questions, survey questions, interview questions. Then obviously synthesis. What does this all mean? Analyzing that, and then doing the needs and performance analysis. Now moving on to the next one, which is learning design. In learning design, a lot of the AI use is similar to last year, but with a few key exceptions. Namely, more people are using AI for a two-way interaction. So they are asking AI for some learning design advice, for feedback on what they have created. So it's not just, okay, so give me this or that. It's about, okay, so what do you think? What can I improve? And they're also increasingly using AI not just in the background, but also as part of the learning experience itself, so that the end user can interact with it directly. So together, these AI uses help scaffold the learning design work and put more tools in the learning designer's toolbox. So the things that haven't changed much is, of course, using AI to create learning outcomes, high-level designs, structure, so okay, format, how do we sequence things, what kind of interactions we use, and so on. Design feedback, as I mentioned. So this is giving AI your draft designs and asking it to highlight perhaps gaps or disconnections or areas for improvement, or where people might get confused, and so on. Giving some advice on, okay, how do we make this more engaging? How do we make this more relevant to this particular audience? And then advice on theory, which is a bit of a controversial use, because it very much depends on how well you set it up. But increasingly more people are using AI to help them draw on learning theory, instructional design methodologies, industry trends, and so on, so that it can sort of advise you on optimal learning design strategies and techniques that you can use in the program. Now, on the tactics, again, AI is very widely used to create storyboards, to create scenarios, case studies, both real and fictional. So either finding real ones that happened in the world by using AI to search the web, or creating fictional ones that could help illustrate key points. Creating all sorts of learning materials. So we are talking workbooks, we are talking study materials, teaching materials, slides, toolkits, guides. So for example, here's a first-time manager guide, or here's a how-to guide for the system. Checklists, tip sheets, handouts, discussion questions for roundtables. So all kinds of learning materials, AI is involved in creating them. Now, learning activities, again, this can be, when we think about AI, we imagine that, okay, this is only for e-learning, but actually a lot of AI is being used for in-person workshops. So what kind of activities can we use with people when we all get together? What kind of group projects, group work can we come up with? Assessments are, of course, another big one. So this is quiz questions as well as feedback. And finally, we have processes and tools. And here's it's a broad category where designers are using AI, for example, to create mockups or to discuss with AI how they can improve their AI assisted learning design processes. So they're pretty much chatting with AI on how they can improve their use of AI. And the final one, AI in the learning experience. This is the newest thing this year, where AI is no longer limited to the internal process of content development. It can now support users directly, most visibly in two ways: through virtual assistants that are embedded in e-learning courses. They can signpost resources, answer questions, support comprehension. And the second one is, of course, this adaptive AI-generated feedback that responds to learners' input. So going beyond static multiple choice questions with canned replies to actually building these interactive branching scenarios where people can answer in their own way. Now, if we move to content development,
just before we do that, Eglė, I just want to quickly say, everyone, fantastic questions and comments coming through. Thank you so much. Also, I knew Eglė was going to need to take a breather and a sip of water there as well. But this is fantastic content you're coming up with. We're going to try to get to all these questions at the end. I don't want to interrupt the flow right now. We want to cover the material. They are great questions. Please keep them coming. And you can vote questions up and down on the questions tab as well. So please help us with sorting through the questions by reading them yourself and deciding which ones you want us to deal with first. Eglė, back to you.
Yeah. We're all in this together, everyone. Let's do this. Okay, so text-based content development. Of course, this is the OG AI use case. This is how AI came to be and came to be so disruptive in a way in our industry from the very beginning. So it's still generating content of all kinds remains the top use of generative AI. But a notable number of respondents specifically highlighted this year that they do not use AI to write content from scratch and only use it for refinement, which is interesting because if you note the design of the survey, we're not asking these questions. We're asking, how are you using AI? So people are explaining how they're using AI, but also voluntarily adding, we're not doing it from scratch. Like, we're doing these things, but not from scratch, which shows you the nuance I get. I guess, and that's the experience with AI, so that people can make these calls now. They kind of know what AI is good for and not so good for. So that also is another marker of how the use of AI is maturing in a way. So some of these are pretty straightforward. We have writing and editing support, so scripting, proofreading, simplifying text for readability, refreshing existing materials with new perspectives. So again, revisiting what you currently have in your libraries. We have summarizing, so condensing things like long form content, videos, podcasts, books into shorter takeaways that people can actually consume. We have repurposing, where we're taking one format and transforming into another. Perhaps you have a webinar and that becomes a course, and that becomes a tip sheet and whatnot. Accessibility and compliance. So things like generating alt text, automatic captioning, or auditing materials against the accessibility standards, which is very important to remember that this is something that AI can help you with. And of course, translation and localization. Now with multimedia, well, video creation is a classic. We have a lot of use of AI avatars used either as presenters for certain courses or as characters in scenarios that people can practice with. We have animations created with AI tools, which makes animation both cheaper and more accessible to teams that do not have specialist skills. We have video editing and production support. Again, AI tools that help you edit videos. Generating B-roll, especially now that the creative part, so not the avatar videos, but things like Sora, where they're getting so much better. They're helping teams with B-roll, and of course, visual storyboarding for video projects. Now with audio creation, this is a really interesting thing to note, because AI is opening up new ways to use audio in learning with a rise in uptake, mostly driven by podcasts. Because last year we barely had any mentions of podcasts. This year we have podcasts created for documents, presentations, any kinds of content. It's a completely new format this year. We have also a lot of use for AI voiceovers, so text to speech. to provide narration, AI dubbing, as well as voice cloning, where you're replicating a specific person's voice for narration, and you don't need to re-record if you make mistakes and so on, or you need to change content. And finally, of course, image creation, which is to generate and adapt visuals for when you cannot just find the right stock image. Now, if we can quickly move to ops, as someone mentioned in the beginning, with Copilot, I feel that this was definitely a point or coincided with the release of Copilot. The fact that we are doing so much more, like AI is becoming a co-pilot, lowercase c, in our day-to-day tasks. So we have, of course, personal productivity. We have people taking notes, transcribing meetings, writing emails, all of that. Obviously, document analysis. So summarizing long reports and research papers, as well as then writing these reports yourself. So we have a bit of a AI writing and AI reading kind of situation, but I'm not judging. And interestingly, on the report writing front, what some teams are doing is that they are actually using the AI capability to adapt their reporting to different teams in the business. So it's not just, okay, so we are going to just write a report. No, it's we know what we want to say, but we want to adapt it to different audiences in the business. Now, admin tasks, so that's pretty much everything that people don't like doing and they have to do a lot. So writing course descriptions in the LMS, doing recruitment, so writing job ads, employee research. So it's more about like pulse surveys, about like general feedback, how people are finding feedback on the L&D. We have policies and legal, which is really interesting because people now sometimes they upload different policies and they see that, okay, so what is our policy missing in comparison to this policy from a different team or from a different company? So doing that sort of DIY legal work, let's put it like that. And tech support, which is a lot of Excel help, writing formulas, using advanced functions, as well as helping troubleshoot when software isn't working as expected, and getting support with different tools or even code. Comms and marketing has grown to a point where it warrants its own category. So we have both tactical uses, so drafting, all kinds of communications, newsletters, welcome messages, event blurbs, as well as strategic. So helping plan communications campaigns and strategies, including messaging, sequencing, and so on. And finally, business support. So unlike other categories that focus directly on learning, this is about how L&D is communicating at a strategic level with different parts of the business. So stakeholder communications, such as shaping strategic business cases, creating internal and external proposals, drafting executive summaries, designing stakeholder presentations, things like that, and then working on project management and process improvement. Gantt charts, matrices, progress reporting, and so on. Then we have strategy and insight, which is again rarely used AI, rare AI use case in the previous years, but now AI is being used for a growing range of strategy-focused activities, from insights to helping L&D leaders think through strategy. So they're using it for skills frameworks and mapping, so understanding what kind of knowledge, skills, behaviors are needed for a family of roles or functions. Training architecture at a high level, not learning design, but strategic level. Strategy and goal setting, so drafting strategic documents, OKRs, North Stars, and just general strategy development in thought partnership with AI. We have skills intelligence, previously limited to a few large organizations using specialist platforms. This year, still quite rare, but we are seeing it appearing more often as smaller teams turn to general purpose AI tools to achieve similar outcomes. We have evaluation and analytics, something we talked about before. It's mostly feedback analysis. So looking at lots of feedback for insights and sentiments, but there is, I would say that roughly 80% of it is feedback analysis. But we also see things like data management, so cleaning quantitative data to prepare it for quantitative analysis, and of course thought partnerships. So both give me inspiration as well as give me feedback, blow holes in my thinking. So all kinds of like two-way conversations with AI, which is really interesting. It's such a simple use case, but it also shows that AI is being integrated in daily work rather than just being this thing that you drop emails into so that it can rewrite them in a better way. And finally, we have workforce enablement. Next slide, Don, please. So this is a family of AI use that's user-facing, and I think there were a few more bullet points. I think. No, Don.
Okay, let me build that. Just 1 second. I'm not quite sure why those didn't come up automatically. There we go.
Yeah, so this is a family of AI uses that are user-facing. So the user or learner interacts with AI directly. So AI for skill practices is arguably one of the strongest uses. And we have role-play simulations, we have AI coaching, we have teaching assistants, which is you have actual programs where AI, like instructor-led programs, where AI tools are integrated so that people can just ask questions of AI. We have, of course, personalization, which has expanded from just being adapted learning and content curation into different things, and flow of work, which is still a very rare, one of the rarest uses of AI in L&D because it's quite complicated to do right, but it's one with huge potential benefits. And I think I'm going to leave everyone at that because we have so much. Well, hopefully it was quite interesting, but we have so much more to talk about. So we can dive back into this. Oh my God, I really can talk about this for hours.
You can. You did a great job. I'm going to just skip over case studies. I'm just going to mention this on one slide. When we get to the triangle, Eglė, let's try and get that done in 10 minutes, right? Let's try to wrap up at 20 past. So we've got 10 minutes for Q&A, okay? It's going to be tough, but thank you for, you could tell that Eglė has really absolutely delved into huge detail on this. Thank you so much for that. Look, all I'm going to say on the case studies bit is that we have 20 pages of case studies in this report. You can see some of the names there, serious organizations doing serious things. We've already had James from Leighton mentioned in the chat, and you can see he's one of the case studies we've got. Just download the report, it's free, and this is a step beyond. These are people who are doing stuff which is in a different sort of league. It's taking the stuff that's doing the job now better and then taking it to the next level and being transformative very often. And that's where we want to get to, I think, on the next section, transformation. We want to look at what does all this mean? We're doing stuff differently. Fabulous. Does it just mean we're doing the old thing faster? Or are we going to do the old thing in a new way, or possibly start doing new things in a new way? We believe, and this is where we move from just saying this is what's happening to this is what we think, the so what bit. We believe that because AI makes it possible to create content so quickly and in such volume that if L&D focuses itself on content, it runs the risk of being seen as irrelevant. And that's very dangerous. So what we're suggesting is, and what we have seen, importantly, in our case studies, is that people are moving away from focusing L&D on content into other areas. So the first area where they're moving away to, we suggest, is being a skills authority. Eglė, do you want to talk in more detail about what being a skills authority means?
Yeah, so the examples I'm going to share, they are fictional, but they're based on the themes that have come out of various conversations that we had with real leaders and organizations. So for skills authority, imagine that there is this global consulting company, right? Tens of thousands of people advising clients on all sorts of things. And of course, in a company like that, skills are everything. Expertise is the product, which means that in that kind of company, capability is not a nice to have. It's at the core of the business model. And if you're a high-performing L&D team in this kind of environment, you know that, first of all, consultants really need to be able to perform. They're client-facing, they're revenue-generating. You know that there's a big difference between skills and content. And if you are a learning team in this kind of environment, you really need to know your stuff. You need to know exactly where upskilling is needed. You need to know how to do it and how to build these skills. And this is what skills authority is about. In other words, you need to treat skills as a critical business resource. So what does it mean? Just like with any other resource in the business, such as the stock you might have in the warehouse, you need to know what and where it is. So to translate it back into skills, what skills are needed, who has them, how to grow them. And it's precisely that ability to grow a critical business resource that gives L&D in the skills authority iteration, that gives L&D the weight and the influence that it needs to stay relevant and keep adding value. And I want to emphasize that both need to be in place. You need to have both the ability to track skills, and you need to have the deep expertise in learning to be able to grow them, because there's no point in skills intelligence if you only offer people content at the end. And it's quite wasteful to offer elaborate upskilling programs if you don't have the data to target them strategically. So all in all, if you can be strategic and grow the thing that drives performance, you're not a support function anymore. You're part of how the business runs. And this is what we mean by skills authorities. L&D leaning into that, like going into it fully, with skills infrastructure, with deep learning expertise, and treating skills as a critical business resource so that the business buys into the value that L&D can prove that it adds.
What L&D does is, and what we've seen in our case studies and the examples we've seen, is that effectively L&D is building the infrastructure, the plumbing to understand the skills in the organization. That goes throughout the organization uses it. L&D is maintaining the throughput of this crucial resource for the business. You don't have to prove your value because you are seen as being how the business creates value. Let's go on to the next one, Eglė, an enablement partner. Skills authority looks after the skills in the organization. What does the enablement partner do?
Yeah, so imagine in this case, we have a global hotel chain, because that could be a good example. So we have hundreds of properties across different continents, each with their own local quirks, culture, and tweaks in the services that they offer. And of course, in a company like that, expertise can live anywhere. And that local knowledge is the company's magic, because every hotel knows how to serve their customers best, right? So from the L&D perspective, it's also a big challenge, because like so many learning teams, they might be hearing the same thing, like training isn't relevant enough. It's too generic. It doesn't apply to us. What works in a city hotel doesn't quite fit with a family resort, right? So this kind of situation that might be very familiar to all of you in your own contexts. And the truth is that no central L&D team could ever keep up with that level of customization. So it's relentless and things go out of date soon. So imagine that instead of asking how to create more relevant and engaging training, which is a very common question in the industry, if we are being honest, they asked a different question. So a question like, what if relevance doesn't come from us at all? What if our job is to make it easy for others to share what they know? As one of the people that we interviewed for this research said, no matter how well learning is integrated into your ecosystem, your employees are going to know more about what they need than you could possibly know. So if we accept that premise, what could that look like in our hotel example? First, L&D could build light frameworks and templates so that any hotel could capture great practice, process tweak, whatnot, and share it with others. They could launch an internal platform where staff could upload short videos or checklists that help them in their day-to-day and could help their colleagues as well. If they're being adventurous, they could even host something like a hospitality hackathon where teams from different countries can come together and swap ideas and create tools. So the central team still exists, but its role shifts. It's not producing, it's connecting in a way. When front desk innovation in Lisbon improves check-in speed, the team in Sydney can pick it up the next day. So L&D function grows not by scale, but by influence. In fact, the team in this kind of iteration, being an enablement partner, it can stay very lean. But at the same time, it also goes up the strategy ladder. It can focus on global priorities like leadership, digital transformation, organizational development, whatever is relevant in your organization. So if you picture it at a high level, the enablement partner L&D shifts from control to coordination and connection. So from owning learning to enabling experts in the company to take the lead. But I want to highlight that it's not about the industry that you're in that defines whether you're able to step into that role. It's the infrastructure, processes, and culture. It's this infrastructure means technical systems, so tools, platforms, whatever, that make it simple for experts to create and share their solutions. Processes with support, where that L&D can use to support and legitimize these local efforts and make sure that it doesn't just unfold into complete chaos. And culture. The enablement partner model can only thrive in a high trust environment. So where competence and innovation of local experts is recognized, but also there is a lot of trust already established between the business and L&D.
I love this. I love this example, Eglė, and there's so much more we could talk about it right now. And I can see people in the chat wanting to know more. I'm going to put the links into the report in a second. Let's go on to the final part of this triangle. Skills, we know. Enablement partner is helping people learn and having that trusted culture, which enables it to happen. Adaptation engine. What does this mean, Eglė? What's happening when L&D becomes something very different?
Yeah, and this is probably the most radical transformation of the three. So a good example to illustrate that would be, say, imagine a large fulfillment company. So the kind of, say, assembles recipe kits and ships them to homes across the country. In a company like that, precision really matters. So a missing ingredient, wrong label, a delay in packing can throw off hundreds of orders in a day and damage customer trust. So if this kind of company had a traditional L&D function, you can probably imagine how that would work. Mistakes would happen, quality scores would start dipping, and someone says, we need people to pack these boxes better. So a training request goes out, L&D builds a short course, and everyone hopes that that will fix the problem. But the reality is that performance isn't just about skill. It's about the system around it. It's not just knowing how to pack the box. It's whether the workstations are positioned in the right way, whether the software highlights errors clearly, whether the processes actually prevent mistakes, whether the incentives reward accuracy over speed. So there's this whole system. And let's see what might happen if we treated this not just as a learning problem, but as a systems problem. We might want to build, for example, a small capability team inside operations, not a learning team, but a team made of process specialists, data analysts, product and service designers, people who deeply understand human behavior. And when quality metrics start to slip, they don't design a course, they start a sprint. They look at the process, tools, and behaviors together. And they may redesign the layout of the packing station. They may build a feedback loop on the scanner system. They may run short practice cycles to build skill and accuracy, or update incentives to reinforce new habits. So learning and skills is part of the system, but there is no standalone team or even person responsible for it. The team is nimble and adaptable enough to do what needs to be done, whatever it is. And over time, performance is affected because the system itself is able to learn and adapt when it operates in that way. So if you picture it at a high level, there is no longer L&D supporting the business. It's the business itself becoming capable of learning. This is what we call the adaptation engine. It's not a static learning function anymore, but a dynamic system that helps the organization continuously adapt, reshaping people, processes, and tech in response to change.
Eglė, you've summarized in 2 or 3 minutes there probably the most important finding of this, which is that AI is being used in some ways to enable organizations to completely rethink how they do L&D. And we call that the transformation triangle. By the way, we put dotted lines between these circles to suggest that it is not that you go to one point or another point, but you could potentially, of course, be using skills in either of the other 2 areas and so on. So it's not that these are exclusive destinations, but it is the case that we've seen people move their L&D departments away from that focus on content to something else and undergoing a transformation in the process. I'm going to wrap up now with our conclusions. very quickly, and then let's deal with some Q&A. Eglė, thank you so much for that intensive view of the transformation triangle. And I love your theoretical examples. So do people in the chat. Our conclusion is, look, we've gone past the inflection point. AI is now in the toolkit. We're using it. More than half the people we surveyed are using it. Use is focused on content, but it is growing more sophisticated. Even at the most basic level, people are doing things now that they weren't doing previously. But if we look at the step beyond that, where organizations are transforming, they are doing things which are spectacularly different, and that's showing impact. And our view is that revolution in this process beats evolution. You can do the old things in a better way, but we're seeing some organizations do old things in new ways and new things in new ways, and that's extraordinary. And strategy will always beat tactics. The focus on seeing the big picture and understanding it will always be trying to do things you do now incrementally better. That's not to denigrate effectiveness and efficiency, always worth being efficient. We can sum it up in these words of Marshall Goldsmith: what got you here won't get you there. The future is bright for people in L&D, but we probably need to think about ourselves and our role in a different way. That's what the transformation triangle is all about. That's a very rapid, very rapid run through what we are trying to do in this report. I'm going to drop the links into chat. Very nice quote from Holly there, saying she's attended many, I assume it's a she, many L&D webinars. This has been best. Even the chat community has been the most focused and helpful. And I would echo that, Holly. Thanks to everybody in the chat who has responded and shared so generously. There's 3 links there. And if you want to, Andrew Jacobs, if you want to, I put them all in together. If you want to put them in separately, it might be easier for people to use them. Let's jump over to the questions. Eglė, we have 8 minutes. 8 minutes to answer everybody's questions. First one, we did get feedback on this, Eglė. Let's be concise about it. Have you explored any of the ethical aspects? We know that was the biggest barrier to using AI in L&D. Just because you can, should you? Should we be diluting the importance of SMEs and belittling experience of others in our field? So 2 things there. Let's look at both of them. Firstly, yes, we did include some stuff in the report about the ethical aspects of using AI, didn't we? And how important it is. And we got some pushback, didn't we, Eglė, on the idea that we weren't mentioning enough of it in previous reports. Do you have any thoughts to share about that?
Yeah, so I think that there are 2 aspects of it. First, definitely we did get write-in comments saying that our blocker is not one of the things you have on the list, is the fact that I'm worried about the environmental cost, or my team started using AI and I now see that our standards of what good looks like are slipping. So things like that. And obviously the impact on what does it mean for people's cognitive skills? What does it mean for jobs? This appeared in our survey. It wasn't the majority, but for a write-in survey, I think it was quite substantial, the amount of comments we got about it, because we weren't asking for it directly.
Yeah.
But I would like to push back on, for example, the example that whoever asked this question gave about belittling SMEs or reducing the importance of SMEs. I don't think that that particular example shows that SMEs are less important. It actually it helps people use the time of experts much better. So you're not downloading information. AI allows you to quickly onboard yourself on the topic, so you can have a much more in-depth conversation with SMEs and really get into their expertise. So you make them more valuable. But again, we're talking about a very particular example. There are definitely cases where, yes, AI, it's about how you use AI. Because it's much like, I use the example of Excel. You can use Excel to compile your shopping list, or you can use Excel to create macros and automations and all of these kind of things. So it's about how you use AI. And yes, there are a lot of AI uses that really reduce the quality and the involvement of people, but there are also uses that enhance the value that people.
Quick example of the SME side of things. Legal company has set up an internal knowledge base that is all of its documentation, all of its expertise, separate from the internet, not uploaded into any large language model, and that is being used by people internally in a variety of ways. One is something you can query, so you can access effectively an SME, but without having to go and bother somebody. The other thing is LLDs using it to query this effectively artificial SME to get ideas about things before going to the SME, so they are fully briefed to go and tackle them. I think you're right to ask the question, and I think what it should make us think is, how do I use this technology not to replace the SME, but rather to get the most out of our SME? So thank you, Amanda, for raising that issue, and also the ethical one. Tanya asks, we talk about AI in general terms. Are you able to pinpoint specific AI software? Well, the answer is no, because we try to be neutral about what we're talking about. However, it is possible, and somebody, I can't see who it was in the chat, put the report through a ChatGPT or some LLM and produced a summary of all the tools that have been mentioned and what they were used for. Actually, that was quite smart. We generally prefer people don't summarize it, but I think that's a good idea. So we don't do it, but if you go through the report, you can definitely extract stuff. Is it being recorded? Yes, you can access the recording later on, and the slides will be on the download
on the tools. Actually, just to answer the question more generally, there's the two most popular general purpose tools are ChatGPT and Copilot, depending on what your company uses. However, when we talk about use cases, they are a combination of using these kind of general purpose tools and prompting them in a smart way. They are a combination of third-party vendor tools that help you do specific things with AI. And also it's about customizing existing tools or maybe connecting them with automation. So or either creating things like ChatGPT, custom GPTs, or creating some sort of particular tool with, say, Copilot Studio, or connecting different tools that you already have using automation. So there are 3 types of tools that are required to achieve the use cases that we have listed.
Thank you for that clarification and detail, Eglė. Really useful. Thank you. Katarzyna asks, what challenges do you see in implementing AI? What are the risks in the area of learning and development? We have 30 seconds to talk about this. Eglė, what can you offer on that?
I mean, challenges. We had a whole chart on the challenges.
I think the key challenge for me is a human one. It's trust and people feeling that they can believe what they're doing. How do you solve that problem, Eglė?
I would say that because we don't have enough time, like trust is a very big topic. But I think what I can say in 15 seconds, so I'm just pivoting this, because a big challenge is people starting with AI, starting with a tool and thinking, okay, so I have it, what do I do with it? Instead of thinking strategically, what are we trying to achieve? And then directing your strategy, not just AI, like everything that you do in that direction, and seeing how AI can support that. And I think people get stuck when they think just about, okay, so there's this tool, we need to use it.
Thank you. Great quote from Stephen. Don't trust, verify. I like that. We've got 30 seconds probably left to wrap up. I just wanted to say that, yeah, the recordings are available via this platform, and also the chat's available via the platform. So you can go back and explore it. Very quickly, agents. Everyone's talking about agents. They have been for some time. We had a big session on it at Learning Technologies. Who's actually using agents? Eglė, we found that it was a bit early. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, so very few people mentioned using agents in practice when they talked about their AI use, and the majority of those who mentioned using agents, they were actually using assistants that they called agents. So that's the reality in a nutshell.
We covered a lot of ground. I'm sorry we haven't been able to answer all of your questions. Such great chat. Thank you so much. I want to thank my co-researcher and co-presenter today, Eglė, who has just done a fabulous job on the work on the report and presenting today. The next session is going to be at 11:30 UK time, so that's in 1 hour from now, how a connected employee experience wins in the AI era. So it's all about how connected employees can help you out. Meanwhile, I once again recommend you go and follow Eglė and myself on LinkedIn, and from that you can go and jump to the report itself. That's the button on my profile. And anyway, it's certainly worth following Eglė anyway for all the stuff that she posts about AI. Eglė, I'm pretty much done. You must be exhausted. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think we're good. I'm quite happy, not exhausted.
Good, excellent. No, and I'm happy too. It's our first webinar sharing this results. It's a big report, 60 plus pages. We're very, very pleased with how it's been received, and we hope it proves useful to the community. Looking forward, I hope that joining you again at 11:30 for the next session. Meanwhile, it's goodbye from me, Don Taylor.
Thank you, everyone.
And goodbye from Eglė.